Good morning, boys and girls. Today we are going to begin our assessment practice for preparing us for our test. Now we're going to start with number 1, and we're going to write on the side which number on the test this one is similar to. But let's start by working the problem. Number 1, 2 friends are working on a project. So far, Cindy has done 4/8 of the project and Kim has done 3/8 of the project. Who has done more of the project? Notice I crossed out explain. You can go ahead and cross out explain. We are going to let our equation do the talking. So I'm going to look at my numbers. First of all, I have Cindy with 4/8, and I have Kim with 3/8. Now the reason I wrote the names above each one is because the question is asking who has done more of the project. So I want to make sure I'm clear as to who did which fraction of the project. Now when I look at this to compare, because I'm going to have to fill in my comparison sign, I see that they both have the same denominator. And if we can think back to that very first lesson, when the denominators are the same, all we have to do is compare the numerators to see which one is greater. So both of them have 8 pieces for their denominator. Cindy has completed 4 of those 8 pieces, and Kim has only completed 3. Therefore, I know that 4/8 is greater than 3/8. But back to the question of who. The who of this would be Cindy, and that is our answer for this one. Now, number 1 on our practice test is very similar to number 3 on the test. So I'm going to write number 3 on the test. This problem is similar to question number 3 on your test. Number 2, Serena can compare 3/4 and 3/6 without using fraction strips. She says that a whole divided into 4 equal parts will have larger parts than the same whole divided into 6 equal parts. 3 larger parts must be more than 3 smaller parts. So 3/4 is greater than 3/6. Is Serena correct? So let's write that down. Serena is saying that 3/4 is greater than 3/6. Now, we want to know, is she correct? Did she figure this out correctly? I think that when we see the same numerator, we can remember our strategy. When the numerators are the same, we compare the size of the denominator. And she is correct because 4 pieces of a whole are going to be larger than the 6 pieces in a whole. Therefore, if I have 3 1/4 pieces making 3/4, that's going to be greater than 3 of the 1/6 pieces being 3/6. So, is she correct? Yes. Serena is correct. Now, we've already completed the problem because we had to add in our comparison. And let me go ahead and tell you what you're going to write on the side. So, number 2, this question is similar to number 1 on your test. Notice that the test has come up in different order than our assessment practice, which is why I'm asking you to add in which problem you're going to look back to when you take this test. Number 3, Jill finished reading 2/3 of a book for a summer reading project. Owen read 2/8 of the same book. Use the number lines to compare how much Jill and Owen each read. Who read more of the book? Well, the first thing I want to do is look at my number line, and I can see that I want to add a box here under my whole number 1 for the first number line, and I want to add a fraction box here. And of course, we're going to do the same thing for that 0. It makes it easier for me to look and decide which fraction is being represented on which line. So when I look at this, I can see 1, 2, 3. This first number line is divided into thirds. So I know that this first number line represents Jill's number line because she finished reading 2/3. So I'm just going to write Jill over here on the side. That's Jill's number line. And then Owen read 2/8. So this one is in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this number line belongs to Owen. Now we're going to fill in the fractions for our number line. So if I know this one's is in thirds, this fraction will be 0/3, 1/3, 2/3, and 3/3. And then when I look down at Owen's number line, I can see that this is going to be 0/8, 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, and 8/8. Now I'm going to plot which part of the book they each finished. So Jill finished reading 2/3. So I'm going to put a big dot at 2/3 for Jill. And Owen finished reading 2/8. I'm going to put a big dot here at 2/8. Now I've put all of my information in, and I'm going to look back at what is my question asking. It says, who read more of the book? Well, when I look at my number lines, I can see that 2/3 is closer to 1 whole than 2/8. Therefore, I know that Jill's is going to have read more. Let's write our fraction. I'm comparing 2/3 compared to 2/8. And again, when I look, I can see that 2/3 is definitely greater than 2/8. Now we could also have used comparing same numerator with a different denominator strategy. And if I look at that, this shows me very well that 3 pieces would be larger than a whole divided into 8 pieces, which is definitely smaller. Therefore, I would know that 2 of the larger 3 pieces would be greater than 2 of the larger 1/8 pieces. So, again, the question says, who read more of the book? My answer would be Jill, and I'm going to circle that one. Now let's look at number 4. Oh, let's go back to 3. I am so sorry. Number 3 on the practice page is like number 9 on the test. So when you get ready to do test and you're looking at number 9, you can come back to see how we solved number 3. Number 4, a small cake is cut into 4 equal pieces. What fraction represents the entire cake? Well, we have a number of ways we could solve this, but I think I'm going to use the model fraction. So here's my here's my cake, and I'm going to make a rectangle cake. And it said it's cut into 4 equal pieces. So I'm going to divide it into 4 equal pieces. What fraction represents the entire cake? So this represents 1 whole. What would my fraction be to show the whole cake as a fraction? Well, I would have 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. So if I wanted to represent my whole cake in a fraction, it would be 4/4. So my answer is 4/4. And I'm going to circle that. Now, how do we know that? One thing we can always remember is when you write a whole number 1 as a fraction, comma, the numerator and the denominator will be the same. Now, if that went too fast for you, please pause and make sure that you can get that whole hint written so that you're prepared for the test. Now, number 4 on the practice is like number 2 on the test. And let's turn our page over. Now we're looking at page 524. It's the back side of what we just started, and we're going to look at number 5. Mark and Sydney each have a piece of wood that is the same size. Mark paints 2/8 of his piece of wood. Sydney paints 5/8 of her piece of wood. Who painted a fraction that is closer to 1 than to 0? Explain how you found your answer. Then tell who painted less of his or her piece of wood. All right, so we're going to look at this one. And number 5, we're going to start with this part. Number 5 is like number 3 on the test. So this one is similar to your number 3 on your test. So the first thing that we're looking at is Mark, and he paints 2/8. Sydney, and I'm going to put a circle for my comparison sign there. Sydney paints 5/8 of her wood. And we want to know who painted a fraction closer to 1. Basically, it's asking if I'm just comparing these two numbers, which one would be greater? And when I look at my denominators are the same, I know I just have to look at the numerator and see which numerator is greater. And I can see that 5/8 is greater than 2/8. So 5/8 would be closer to 1. So 5/8 is closer to 1. So who painted more of a fraction? It would be Sydney. And then the question says, then tell who painted less of his or her piece of wood. The lesser is Mark. Mark painted less wood, period. Now let's look at number 6. Greg colored the fraction model below. Which fractions name the purple part of the model? Select all that apply. Now, number 6 is going to be similar to number 4 on the test. So number 6 is similar to number 4. So let's take a look. The first thing we're looking at is, does the purple part represent 1/2? Well, if I looked at this whole piece just like this, and let me go ahead and highlight around it, because this is the whole. If I look at the whole piece and I were to divide that whole into half, I would be dividing it right here. This would be 1/2 right here. Is there only half of the purple spaces covered? No. It is purple spaces cover more than 1/2. So 1/2 would not be an option. Now, let's count the whole pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 pieces in all. So automatically I know that one denominator that I would use would be 8. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces. So I know I could represent the purple by writing 6/8. So let me see. Do you see 6/8 on this options? Yep, right here, 6/8. So we know 6/8 represents the purple part that is shaded. But now let's look at the other options. 8. Is 8 divisible by 3? Could we divide 8 by 3 and have none left over? Nope. So we know that if it is not divisible, 8 is not divisible by 3, then we know that this could not be representing thirds. Let's look at the 3/4. Could this represent fourths? 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. Could this be represented in fourths and this be 1/4, 2/4, 3/4 of our model represented? Yes, it could. So 3/4 is another correct answer. And then the last one is 4/6. It's definitely divided into 6. I cannot divide this any other way for it to represent 6. And 8 is not divisible by 6 with none left over. So 4/6 is not a correct answer. And do you see part B? For part B, we are going to X out part B and not do this part. Number 7. Carl, Fiona, and Jen each had a sandwich. The sandwiches were the same size and cut into eighths. Carl ate 7/8 of a sandwich, Fiona ate 3/8 of a sandwich, and Jen ate 6/8 of a sandwich. Who ate the most? So basically we need to find out which one of these fractions is the greatest. So I'm going to write Carl ate 7/8 and Fiona ate 3/8. And then there was Jen. She ate 6/8. Since my denominators are all the same, all I have to do is compare my numerators to see who ate the most. I got to compare 7, 3, and 6. And when I look at 7/8, I know that Carl ate the most. Okay, so if I wanted to order these fractions so that I could see it horizontally going across, I would say from least to greatest, 3/8 would be the least. So 3/8 is less than, 6/8 would come next, which is less than 7/8. And so the greatest number would be 7/8. Now, number 7 is not like any of them on the test, but there are components of it comparing like denominators that will come in handy. I want to go back to number 6. Number 6, I said we didn't need to do this part, but I have changed my mind and I do want to do this part. Let me erase that right off. And the question is, does 1/4 name the unshaded part of the model? When we were up here and we said that 3/4 did show these parts here that are purple, if this represents 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and this is 4/4, what part of this model would be orange? That's right, it is 1/4. So the answer would be yes, 1/4 names the unshaded part. And that unshaded part in this situation was orange. It was the orange part. It was not shaded. Now, the next thing I want to tell you about is the second page that goes with this lesson we are going to do tomorrow. We are just doing this first page as our review for today. But I do want you to take out, actually leave it in, but page 518 in your book is your vocabulary review. That will be your homework for tonight. So tonight's homework is to do numbers 1 through 9. Notice you do not have to do number 10. You can if you want, but the numbers that you're going to do are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And I will talk to y'all again tomorrow. If you have any questions, feel free to have your parent let me know.